Today I got a special guest, someone that I met, probably about 2 years ago, and a coworker had brought this nonprofit to my attention. And frankly, I was unaware of it before, and it struck a chord with me, and for a couple different reasons that we'll get into. But it struck a chord with me, and it helped me realize that there's probably a lot of people like me, and we all know that there's lots of nonprofits that are out there, and maybe we haven't heard of all of them, but man, there's so many dog lovers out there, and I know that so many people either know veterans or folks that were in law enforcement, and have had maybe some things mentally occur, and so this nonprofit really struck a chord, and I wanted to bring awareness to it, and more importantly, the person that I met is someone that's got so much fun energy, is a big personality, but also one that I think that anyone that comes across Gail Dickerson is going to remember her just because of the personality and the passion that she has. And when I stop talking and introduce Gail, you'll see her background, and she mentioned to me about, basically her life is revolved around veterans and dogs. And so Gail Dickerson, welcome to the podcast. She is a part of Big Paws Canine. And so Gail, I want to kick this off because, like I said, I think there's so many people that haven't heard of this, and I know that it gets on the news and you do your the fundraising events, but still, there's people that just have so many things going on. So, Gail, just kind of give us a brief overview on how Big Paws Canine got started, where it got started, and then your involvement in it.
Okay, I'll try to give the Reader's Digest condensed version because after our previous meetings, I'm sure you know how apt I am to dive down rabbit holes and just be gone for the count.
That's why I love you, Gail.
So Big Paws Canine started in around 2010, and it started in California by a gentleman who was in the Marine Corps, also was a prison guard here in South Dakota, and then went back into the Marine Corps because, he didn't learn the first time. But then after leaving the Marine Corps post 9/11, he moved back to his home in California and became a police officer. So he, through a series of events where he was able to see how his dog impacted one of his best friends who was in a rehab facility, and it promoted him to want to be able to spread that kind of joy or usefulness as far as he possibly could. So he started Big Paws Canine, and the name Big Paws Canine came from his dog, Nitro, whose paws were huge, huge. So, I mean, that's the Marine coming out, though. Like, let's give them the obvious. Nitro has big paws. We'll call it Big Paws. So, as time went on, the founder of Big Paws, whose name is Steve Slavic, he has two daughters that were born here in South Dakota, and his one daughter was going to SDSU. So Steve came to visit his daughter and decided that he wanted to kind of expand into South Dakota with his service dog program. And coincidentally, I'm going to tell you, the number of coincidences that just fall into place for us. Coincidentally, my husband and I had stopped by the VFW, which we had never done. Coincidentally, at that time, the commander of the VFW was a soldier who my husband had helped get back home when all the doors were closed to him. Coincidentally, Steve Slavic had just stopped by the VFW and mentioned to the commander, I'm looking for somebody that we can pair with a service dog. And when the commander saw Rob and I walk in, they had known that my husband's service dog that I had trained for him previously had passed away. And everything just kind of, like fell into place. And the commander stopped us and said, stop, Sir Major, stop. And he said, just hang on. So he got on the phone and he was like, Steve, you got to come back. The guy I was telling you, he's here. And so Steve came back, and my husband and Steve sat down together, and for once I zipped my lip and stood in the background and let them do their thing. And so Steve decided that my husband was a really good candidate for a service dog and thought it would be a great guy to kind of kick the program off here in South Dakota. So as time went on, Steve came to our house to work with the dog and us, and we had a whole bunch of dogs in our house. And he was watching me with the dogs, and he was, you look like you almost know what you're doing. And I said, yeah, kind of maybe a little, because what he did not know previous to that moment was that when that I had been training dogs for better than 20 years at that point. And but again, I mean, it was their thing. So as much as it killed me, I just sat back. And so Steve started talking to me, and when we got into like dog theory and training theory and nutrition and all the things, he said, would you consider fostering a dog for Big Paws? Oh, sure, of course. Another dog in the house? Oh no, say it isn't so. So Steve and I went, and we picked up these 3 puppies, and 2 of them were beautiful, robust, great big blocky headed black labs. And the third one, if I said run to the litter, that would give you one idea. But take runt a step backwards. Like this little puppy looked like it was kind of an afterthought. Like it didn't even look like any of the other puppies in the litter, other than the fact that it was black. It was tiny. It didn't have the blocky head. It looked like it was the last one in line at dinner time all the time. So Steve handed me this pathetic little puppy, and he says, "There you go, Dickerson. Impress me. Do something with that." So that was the first dog that I fostered and trained for Big Paws, and his name was Tracer. The 3 dogs that we took in, we named them all with things that had to do with some sort of a military first responder connection. So my husband's dog got named Artillery Thunder, and we called him Artie for short. And then there was Jersey, who was named after the USS New Jersey, and then Tracer, as in, the little tracer bullets. So that's so. Thankfully, my husband and I were personal friends with the gentleman who we had lined up for Tracer, and we had a lot of fun doing the training and having all of the challenges that come along with puppyhood. And I thought it was going to do my husband's head in, because the dog decided he was going to teethe on the chairs from our oak dining set.
Not good.
No. But it was a baby. That's what the babies do. And I thought that might have brought my career as a foster parent for Big Paws to a screeching halt. But thankfully, Rob came around, and he was like, okay, I get it. He goes, you're going to have to keep a closer eye on that dog. And all right, that's fine. I'll do that. So as it turns out, by the time Tracer was ready to go to his home with his veteran, we had taught the dog, because the veteran had COPD and some apnea, sleep apnea. So he used a CPAP machine that covered pretty much all of his face. And unfortunately, when people are coping with things like post-traumatic stress or anxiety, depression, and even people who don't but have seen combat, they will frequently have very animated dreams / nightmares / night terrors. And so obviously if somebody's thrashing around in their sleep, if you've ever seen a CPAP machine, it's a whole mask with a hose that is attached to a device that goes on a bedside table. So it's a pretty intricate thing, but as soon as somebody starts thrashing about, they can dislodge it so that the seal is broken, so the air escapes. They can unattach. Oh my goodness. They can detach the hose. So obviously we don't want to do anything that's interfering with somebody's breathing. So we taught this dog how to alert when the sound of the air escaping. So whether it was escaping the hose or escaping the mask because of a broken seal, the dog would alert the person. He would be able to wake up, readjust, get everything back going. So one night, this gentleman was in bed, and the mask, we assume the mask dislodged because the dog jumped up on the bed and started alerting. So his alert was a tap. He would tap on his person. And so the gentleman woke up and he was like, Tracer, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And the dog continued pestering him and pestering him and pestering him. And the gentleman just finally said, Tracer, get off the bed. I'm fine, my mask is fine, get off the bed. Well, the dog got off the bed, opened the bedroom door, went across the hall to where the wife's bedroom was, opened the wife's bedroom door, jumped on her bed and grabbed her by the nightie to pull her out of bed. And she went over in to check on her husband, and her husband had been having a stroke.
Oh my.
And that family lived in Watertown. So had it not been for that dog waking that gentleman up and the wife up, and them being able to get an ambulance into the VA at Sioux Falls, I don't know how happy the ending of that story would have been. He
Wow.
survived, you know, he had some residual effects because it was a stroke. Um, but he survived. And to me, at the end of the day, as long as we're keeping them on this side of the grass, it's kind of the big win of the day, right?
So Gail, you just touched on something that I'd thought about this, and obviously, and I'd like to get into to more about the training of them and what they do. But you think about that, a dog gets so obviously the training is part of it, but it gets very in tuned to the health of the person, and ultimately when you talk about trained dogs for veterans or law enforcement, those types of things, I always kind of lean towards, and maybe this is, and you can probably give some clarity, but lean towards the dogs come in to go, hey, this person has probably seen or experienced things that our brain isn't mentally or emotionally probably able to handle very well. And so they become more of that service dog where like, hey, I'm freaking out a little bit. I'm somewhere where I don't want to be, or I need some emotional, non-conditional love type of things at home, to keep myself harming myself, or hey, I don't like big crowds and I'm in one and I'm starting to have a panic attack, and the dog goes, I sense it. You and I are getting out of here. But you just described something completely different. It wasn't that. It was something that the guy didn't even realize he was happening. So walk me through, how do you train? I mean, dogs, I think, already have an innate ability to probably recognize these things, but do you have some sort of a way when you train them to kind of know that or recognize it?
Well, the training that we institute with our dogs is completely force-free. We don't do any compulsion training. Um, so I don't want to say that it's a kinder, gentler thing, but by not causing any fear or discomfort in the dog when you're doing the training, you get a much more compliant dog. It makes them want to do the thing as opposed to being afraid not to do the thing. That makes sense?
Yep,
Okay.
totally.
So that's the first thing we do. And then we train the veteran and the dog together for the whole thing. It's not like I don't take the dog, do the thing, and hand it back. Mm-mm. We make the veteran and the dog work together from day one. for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that it builds the bond between the dog and the handler. And for anybody who has ever gone through dog training, you have such an intense um, uh, interaction. The interaction when you're training a dog is so intense because you're totally focused on the dog and the dog should be totally focused on you. So you have that time where nothing in the world exists except for you and that dog and that relationship that you're building. And second reason that we do it that way is because dogs are not perfect. Dogs are not robots. They are going to mess up, and it doesn't matter. You could have the most exquisitely trained dog, and at some point, there's going to be an oopsie somewhere because, again, they're dogs, they're fallible. So, if we have the handler and the dog training right out of the gate together, the handler is learning the process by which training occurs. So if something does go off the rails, they are more prepared to be able to deal with it. As opposed to if I hand this perfect dog or almost perfect dog over to somebody and they're going out in public and the dog is exposed to something they've never seen before and they have a fearful reaction, the person on the other end of the leash, if they haven't seen the dog act like that before, they're not going to know what to do. So by being out in public, they're already in a high stress environment for themselves. And then they see the creature that's supposed to be able to get them through all the things kind of go off the rails. So now they're kind of, I'm not right, my dog's not right, and I'm in this public place. So they're going to feel like far, far, far more vulnerable. So by going through that training process together, we give these people tools in which to deal with things that they would not necessarily have been prepared to deal with. The other thing that we teach is willful disobedience. So what we do is we put after we get the skill trained, we put the dog and the human in a couple of situations where somebody tries to get the dog to do something else and the dog goes back to the handler and it's the handler, and then we flip it around so that the handler is trying to get the dog to do something and we get the dog to do that willful disobedience, and we specify to the things that willful disobedience is completely necessary for. That would be something along the lines of when someone is escalating, excuse me, when you have somebody who's coping with especially post-traumatic stress or a traumatic brain injury, oftentimes they will be at almost like the apex of overstimulation and accelerated upset. And they won't notice it because they always kind of feel like that. And so by having a dog be able to ignore all that to see that their job is to distract that person while they're in that place. If the person is trying to argue with the dog is going to hold their own and just say, nope, you're not right. You got to pay attention. You're not right. And we do it by scent work. In all seriousness, you know, a lot, as much as I would love to believe that dogs have this extrasensory perception about how I'm feeling or how you're feeling, it's right here. It's all in their nose, because as soon as your mood changes, the chemicals that your brain is giving off change, and they can smell the chemicals in your brain changing. That's why they're used for things like diabetic alert and seizure alert. That's how they're able to do that. I mean, obviously, we know that dogs' noses are really good, or else we wouldn't have dogs going on to entire ships of containers and finding one container in the middle of 500 containers that's full of coffee and 1 ounce of cocaine, and those dogs know that that's there because it doesn't smell right. So it's the same approach we have with our humans. And so we get our dogs, and that's another way that we make that bond stronger, and go through the training together, because the more training they go through, the dog is far more sensitive to the changes in the chemistry of the person.
Wow. So we have someone, and I want to get into this a little bit. So I read on your website, um, it's much easier to find a dog for a specific person than have a dog and then go find a specific person. And so when you just described this, you have, let's just say it's a veteran and a dog, and you start the training process. How long does that process typically take?
I wish anything was typical, because then I could just answer a question.
Sure.
I would love to be able to just answer a question. Yeah, but
How about this? What's
on average, that
on
I can.
average,
Okay, so on average, it takes about 1 year to get the dog to learn all of the commands and the tasks that are necessary. And that's just that portion of it. But on average, it takes 2 years for the dog and the human to start working together like a well-oiled machine.
wow, 2 years.
Yeah.
I'll have to tell that to some of my hunting buddies when they just want to get a dog to go find a bird and catch it. Like it doesn't go.
Right. It doesn't quite work that way. I mean, for hunting dogs, that's a little bit different, because
Way
they're
different learning curve.
well, it's a different learning curve, but it's a completely different focus.
Right.
So, you've got this versus this,
Right.
as far as the perspective of what the dog has to pay attention to.
Yeah, and they're not like, hey, are you starting to feel a specific way? They're like, hey, we're out here. All the proper endorphins are going on when I go out with my dog to go try to find a pheasant. So I'm sure his focus is not on me at that point. But so let's dive into this, because I think this is important. Like I said, a lot of people are probably hearing about this maybe for the first time. And so, this originated somewhere out. Was it South Carolina? Is that
No,
where?
South Carolina is where our head office is now,
Okay.
because Steve and his wife actually relocated from California down to
Okay. Because you have
South Carolina.
there's like 3 locations in the
Yep.
United States, correct? So South Carolina, Southern California, and then Sioux Falls, which is always unique when Sioux Falls has something you go, what? Who would have guessed? But so you have these three locations. Um, we like I said, we all know some people that I shouldn't say we all know someone that maybe needs a dog, but I think the part of the process is someone that's maybe hearing this that's thinking, man, maybe this is something for me. What do they do? Like, what's the steps for them to say, am I a candidate for a dog? And like, do I have to talk to somebody? Like, how am I identified as somebody that says, you know what, you're a good candidate for this?
Okay, so the first thing that has to be that's required, I mean, and I'll start off with Big Paws specifically, but then I'll give more general information. So, because Big Paws is a 501c3, in our mandated information, we are exclusive to veterans and former first responders. So that may be why a lot of people have not heard about us, because if you're general public, unfortunately, we're not in a position to offer any assistance. Um, so there's that. That's the first thing that has to be crossed off. If it's Big Paws, you have to either be a veteran or a former first responder. But then just generally speaking about service dogs in general. First of all, service dogs are not a cure for anything. Service dogs are an assistive device. By definition, a service dog is a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform a task to assist a person with a disability in their daily life. Then we have to look at the definition of disability, because who's to say? Who's to say what is a disability? And especially now that people are finally realizing that mental health is the same as physical health as far as being a health concern. Where do you draw the line? Um, if you have a condition or situation that interferes with your daily life. So if you have something that keeps you from working, if you have something that keeps you from leaving the house, if you have something that absolutely interferes with your ability to live life as what we, oh, and I hate the word normal, but what people would basically consider normal, for lack of a better word, um, then your next step would be, how does a dog fit into my life? If you are a person who does not go outside, are you willing to work with a dog that has to go outside? That's a big thing there. Also, if you are a person who is very sedentary, dogs need exercise. If you are a person who, you want to look at your household. If your household is really busy, are you willing to take on the responsibility of a dog? Because it's more than just having a great dog to go everywhere with you. You've got to feed that dog. You have to be on top of that dog's vet care. The Americans with Disabilities Act clearly states that the dogs have to be clean and well groomed in order to go out in public. So if you have a dog that likes to go out and roll in whatever the creatures have left in the yard and come in smelling like a barnyard, you better be prepared that you need to shampoo that dog before you can go out in public with it. The other thing is the cost. Now, because we're a nonprofit, we don't put the cost on our veterans as far as the training and the dog, etc. But having a dog in your home, you've got to pay your vet bills. You have to pay for a quality food. You have to pay for grooming. You have to pay for the tools that your dog is going to need, such as a crate and dog bowls and treats and training things and toys. So, though you have to look to see if a dog is something that you can handle caring for before you can consider whether a dog can help you or not. Because first and foremost, if you're taking on that responsibility, you have to be responsible and take care of all of those things. So you've got the financial thing you have to look at. You have the responsibility aspect. You have the outdoor and the exercise aspect, and you have to be willing to go to training. So all of those things, if you're like, okay, so I have this thing that keeps me from participating in my daily life the way I would like to, and I think maybe I should look at a dog. And I can handle the financial aspect, I can handle the time aspect, I can handle the going out, I can handle going to classes. So your next step would be to do your research. There are programs out there that will train a dog and give you the fully trained dog, and then you go through like the getting the dog into your home type training, where either you go to them for a couple of weeks or they send somebody to you for a couple of weeks to teach you how to operate this fantastic creature. Then you also have to ensure that when they say that the dog doesn't cost you anything, you got to read all the fine print, because there are organizations out there that will say, oh yeah, we'll give you the dog for free, but you got to pay $9,000 for training. So there's all of those things. I cannot emphasize enough to read all that you can, to learn all that you can, to reach out to these places, send them an email and ask up front, what do I need to do? Now, granted, when it comes to Big Paws, like I said, we don't ask our recipients to shoulder the cost, but for $12 a year for unlimited training. Wow. So obviously that's not going to be a detrimental situation. But like I said, if you're all raring to go and then you get into another program and they say, oh, by the way, we expect 9,000, 25,000, do a GoFundMe, get your community behind you, that sort of thing. Just be aware that there are companies out there that will do that. Once you see all of those things, then you have to be considerate of the people in your house, whether it be a spouse or parents or siblings, roommates, whatever. If you have other people in your house besides you, you have to make sure that these folks are all on board. Because again, there's going to be times that other people are going to have to step in and help you with your dog. You know, you may have it in your head that you're going to be able to do all the things all the time until you go outside and you slip on one of our amazing ice rinks that happen in our driveways in the wintertime in South Dakota. So let's say you roll your ankle and you pop your knee out, and then you're put on limited mobility bed rest for 6 weeks. Who do you have to help you with that dog? So there's, you know, that's actually a lot of the conversations we have when we interview our prospective people. So I would say also apply to everybody unless they're charging you for an application fee. I don't agree with that. But like, I mean, as far as application fees, you should not pay to apply for something. Anyhow, what I recommend is apply to all of them, any of them, whatever ones speak to you, because there's far more people that are looking for service dogs than service dogs available.
Sure.
So that's you know, you want to spread a wide net for that. If somebody were specific to looking to get involved with Big Paws, you go to our website, go to our website and fill out an application. And how our application process works is that application gets sent off into the nanosphere and then magically appears in my inbox, and I review it, and then I send it off to one of our volunteers, and that volunteer will call the person who's the applicant, and they will ask them a series of questions. We do call your references and ask them a series of questions, and once all of that is completed, then the person would receive an email with the documentation that we need. We need things like a DD-214 or other document that shows that you are either a veteran or a first responder. We also need to have, I don't want to say proof, but acknowledgement of disability. So if it's like SSDI that somebody's receiving, or if they're getting disability from the VA, there's a percentage that's on there. And I mean, as long as it's more than 1%, it's still considered a recognized disability. So we would have that. And, you know, we don't need to know the amount that somebody's getting because it's not about that. It's just to see that this person does have a recognized disability. And then we have a form that we have a medical professional have to fill out. Because, you know, people think you can just go to your doctor and get a letter. Doesn't work that way. Because a lot of doctors are at the point now where so many people are thinking that service dogs or ESAs or whatever name somebody wants to come up with this week on these are a dime a dozen. And it can be for nefarious reasons, like they don't want to pay extra to take their dog on a plane, or because they don't want to pay extra because they're in a rental facility, or they don't want to pay extra to have their dog stay at a hotel with them, or whatever. That there's those portion. There are people who legitimately can and would benefit. So having that kind of acknowledgement from a mental health care professional or a physical health care professional gives us that indication. And the way we write our letter is saying that the person would benefit from being a part of a program in which they train with a service dog. because that takes the onus off and the liability off the medical professional. Because should anything untoward happen, like let's say somebody just willy-nilly writes a note and it turns out that it's an Irish wolfhound that decides that the neighbor's chihuahua looks like a tasty snack, and they grab a hold of the dog, you don't want the doctor, because blanket suits. Usually people who have disabilities also have a limited income.
Yeah.
So can't get blood from a stone, so you can't sue that person for anything, but you can sue the doctor who signed the note, is kind of what the thinking is there. And God forbid if like any animal bit a child, so these doctors and medical care facilities are kind of stepping back saying, no, we're not writing those letters just for liability purposes. So that's why we wrote the note and said that this person would benefit by participating in a program in which they train with a service dog. That way, nobody's catching the heat
Sure.
for that. The other thing is, because a doctor can't prescribe a service dog, because there is no drugstore in the United States that has them behind the counter.
Right.
And if you're writing a prescription, you should be able to walk into any pharmacy and hand over the prescription and leave with the cure. If they're totally out of stock at CVS.
So you mentioned, and anyone that would see behind the curtain of the training, the food, the vet, everything. And quite frankly, if you've owned a dog, you recognize that there's an expense. I mean, I usually figure it's at least $1,000 a year, just if you're going to just do the food, well, depending on the size of your dog, but $1,000 per year for sure. I mean, just to have it. Now, when you go into specialized servicing, and I would imagine that, as you said, it's maybe $9,000, $15,000. So all of this gets, it has a bill. We'll just put it that way.
Absolutely.
You, as a nonprofit, go out and raise funds. And this is where I think a lot of people that may be watching or listening might say, well, how do I get involved? Maybe I want to help. How do I donate? Like, talk me through some of the fundraising efforts that you do. And then I want you, because it's coming up, being that it's November 4th, Lights on Lotto will be coming up. Tell us a little bit about some of the fundraising efforts that you do, and then also touch on that you've got a new facility that will be opening pretty soon as well. So how does that all come together? And is there going to be a ribbon cutting and that sort of thing?
Oh, there's going to be a ribbon cutting. There's after all the blood, sweat, and tears that my husband has poured into this building, there's going to be a ribbon cutting. I mean, it might only be me with a tambourine in the back, but I'll be the band playing. It'll be a whole thing. So to talk about the fundraising, we do a lot of smaller things, like in conjunction with small businesses. One example was on Halloween. Every year we go to First Stop Coffee Shop. It's that little tiny red barn on the corner of 12th and Ellis. And I'll train the dogs outside that day, but I swear, if you want to know what the coldest day of the beginning of the winter season is, it will be the day that we are at that little place.
It's written.
Yes. So every year, like they give a huge portion of the sales that they earn in that day to us as a donation. Other things that we will do is we'll run raffles, and we try to get really impressive raffle prizes. In the past, we've given trips to Las Vegas away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you want to. We also do gun raffles.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Hey, How many dog owners? I gotta say, there's at least 50% of people that have dogs
Also have
also
guns.
are, yeah, I mean, they go hand in hand, obviously, right? There's a hunting community that really appreciates dogs too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of our best supporters have been hunting people. Um, so with Steve's move to South Carolina, he opened up a gun shop down there. So we have access to some pretty fancy pieces of equipment. And obviously, we can access them at a really, really good price so that when we sell our tickets, we actually are able to benefit from that. Um, we do have a group called the Solomon's Guard. They are a group of volunteers that work with us under the Big Paws umbrella, and they are motorcycle enthusiasts. And so every year at Christmas time, they do up Christmas trays for us, and they raise a boatload of money for us doing that. And it's all homemade stuff on these giant Christmas trays. And then they do a summer long poker run for us. That's kind of interesting because it's a farther geographical reach than a standard poker run because it starts in May and it doesn't close until August. So you have that whole time to go and do all the stops and get your stamps. And that way, for those fair weather riders, I'm too old to deal with driving in the rain. When I was young, I didn't care. Now, I don't need it. Don't want it. Um, so you have the opportunity that if you want to do the poker run on a Thursday or a Saturday, and if that day turns out not great, you can go 2 weeks from Saturday or whatever the case is. So we love that summer long poker run. Also, there's the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association. They have given us a portion of their proceeds from their poker run each year for the past, my goodness, I think it's 11 years they've been doing that for us. So generally speaking, we kind of catch as catch can when it comes to those types of fundraisers, but everybody has to have that one big one a year that you throw all of your heart and soul into. And that is Lights on Lotta to us because the two gentlemen who run that, um, when they came to visit and talked to Big Paws and got involved and wanted to have the proceeds from that come to us, like they're just two regular guys. And that's what I loved about it. That's what Big Paws is. We're just regular people, right? So these two regular guys, they take cranes out and put these lights up in the trees. It's outstanding. And they have like the little donation boxes, and we have characters. We show up in character. I mean, every year traditionally, I'm a reindeer. And the only thing missing is the red flashing nose that sticks into everybody's business. This is probably why I don't have the red flashing nose because people don't want it in their business. But um, so we have a Grinch and we have Santa Claus comes for a visit, and we have the gingerbread. You remember from Shrek? Gingy, the gingerbread man, he comes out. And so each year I have been purchasing on the down low some post Halloween sale costumes so that we can inexpensively dress our people up. And I tell you, you have so much fun when you've got a face full of stuff that isn't your own. You can act as silly and have so much fun. And if you're standing outside in December in the dark, waving at people as they drive by, you got to have a little bit of fun with it, right? So last year we had Jack Skellington and Sally. And Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas, he has that little ghost dog, and the ghost dog was there too. So we just have an absolute scream with that every year, and we give out candy canes and hot chocolate packets. And this year we're adding to it by having glow-in-the-dark bracelets, because sometimes we run into people who can't have candy canes or little kids who don't like candy canes. We try and give all the flavored candy canes because, peppermint used to be the only thing. And
Right.
now they have Jolly Rancher. Do you know that? Because nobody ever wants to see me fit into clothes that I had 5 years ago. It's a thing. There's my conspiracy. They're
Well,
coming out with these wonderfully flavored candy canes. Um, and so that turned into like just a big gas for all of us. We run back and forth between each person's station, and we giggle and we just act silly. And depending on the temperature, we'll have the dogs come out, our service dogs come out with their people. But again, 2 years ago, it was like minus, oh my God, degrees out. And we could only have the dogs out for maybe 5 minutes and then put them in cars and bring them back out. And because it is so dark, we're getting far better feedback with the characters because, you've got a big human sized character versus a dog in the dark. And the most of our dogs are dark colored. So So if people come to see the dogs, and unless one of them has a reflective strip on one of their vests, you don't get to see the dog. Um,
well, the firefighters come out too with the big
yes,
truck. It is one where, and hey, if somebody wants to come out and hand out candy canes and hot chocolate, I mean,
ab-
look, this isn't like it isn't like Gail just says it's all me and you can't come participate. I mean, they're more than happy to have someone stand out there. And I will say this, having done that, it doesn't matter if, like you said, it could be really cold, or if you think you've got a pretty good night, you have to remember you are not in one of those costumes. So if you just show up with a winter jacket and a hat, after about an hour and a half, you're thinking, man, I should have, once the sun goes down, it's a whole nother world out there.
it
But
absolutely is.
it is amazing. And, the holiday season comes along with that. And, you put the combination of things together and to see people, the kids love it. Obviously, they roll up, their windows are down, you hand the stuff to them, but that's when you start to see people's hearts in the community. And the one thing I think with the name, Big Paws Canine, like you said, where it came from, um, and I think a lot of people are like, hey, it's about the dog. Dogs are involved, but this is about people. It's not about dogs. Gail's not out saving dogs. This is helping veterans and first responders, that I had said before, potentially dealing with some things that you and I can't comprehend, or there's other things that are going on in their lives that they need. And so, I hope people when they hear this, you think about dogs because of the name, but it's about people. And this is something that I know you are wildly passionate about. You said before the podcast, the sign behind you, it's about the veterans, and then obviously a ton of experience of dealing with dogs and training them. You said coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a follower of Jesus, and you were put in that place that day for a reason, and that meeting happened, so you could go and serve a purpose that you do so well. And we're all fortunate that we have someone like Gail, and we're really fortunate to have Gail on this planet to do the things like this that most people find reasons not to do, and you run towards it. And because of that, I suppose I say God bless you for doing this, Gail. But what a wonderful thing, that we have in this community. And like I said, I want to bring awareness to it. I hope people will check out this. You can go to, it's bigpawscanine.com, right? You can go to the website and you can go on and learn more about it. And then if you really want to have fun with it, go to you can go to Gail Dickerson. You can find Gail Dickerson on Facebook. You can also go to the Big Paws Canine Facebook page. And I think right, maybe one of the most latest posts, I think it is Gail standing in the reindeer outfit, dancing around, dancing around on Lotta Street, um, which
There's that one, but I mean the latest post was okay, now because I love irony at its finest, when we did our Halloween thing at First Stop, we had dogs, our service dogs and dogs in general coming around. So I dressed as a lion. So big
maybe
fat
that's what that
rubberly
one is.
dog show.
Maybe that's a lion outfit. I couldn't really tell. I've got headlights, I've got things going on. I can't. It doesn't seem like it was a rain. I was thinking that you were wearing a dog suit for some reason.
Oh, then that would have been the lights on Lotto one because I have a brown fuzzy suit
Yeah,
and I think I'm gonna put lights on my antlers this year because it gets so dark that my antlers, like, in the dark, they're not gonna really see my antlers until I'm right up by the car.
they
So I think I
disappear.
might just string some lights around my antlers so that that shows up.
Yeah, today's technology, you don't need electricity. They got just hit the switch and they're on.
Battery pack.
So Gail, before I let you go,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's people on here that say, what can I do to help? Um, what's some great ways that someone can come in and even if they want to donate, where do I go to do that?
Okay, so you can donate just about anywhere. Like you said, you can reach out to me directly on Facebook. You can reach out to our Facebook page. We have a donate button on our website. If there is some sort of event that you want to hold, definitely contact me directly so that we can get involved. Because anytime somebody wants to hold an event to our benefit, we want to be involved. And not so that we can take over, but just to show our appreciation. And it's also a great training opportunity for our dogs to get out and do these events. Um, let's see, what else would we do? Between the website and the Facebook page, that's where the donate buttons are. Um,
When is Lights
now,
on Lattes this year?
Lights on Lotta is starting off the top of my head. Now,
Put you on
see,
the spot, didn't I?
I don't
Well, if
even
you're,
have a way to prepare for that. I was going to cheat and look at my Lights on Lotta page here to see
well, I'm
if
sure
they've
it'll be on
updated
the
it.
probably be on the Facebook page, but that's also a
Um,
way that you could swing by and
yep.
donate some money into the box too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of nice too, because then you get that face to face. I mean, the Midwest is such an absolutely amazing, warm, and welcoming, giving community, and that's coming from a Canadian. I hail from Canada, so I love the spirit of the Midwestern people, because that's the closest that you get to the quote unquote nice Canadians that I'm used to. So having that face-to-face communication and connection, I can't tell you how much I love that. It's so important because I don't think anybody needs to be nameless or faceless. And unfortunately, when things grow to a certain point, that's what happens. And that doesn't make me happy.
Well, like I said, there's a reason you are. I mean, if there's some perfect examples out there of someone that you want to meet face to face, you are one of those people. I gotta say, when you're around Gail and you're doing those things, it's a little infectious to smile and have a good time. I don't think she knows how to do it any differently, but I appreciate you taking time to come and do this today. I'm going to check in with you. We talked about doing some things a couple years ago, and we came out and did the It's on Lotta deal. But we're starting to search around for some things this year, and maybe we could connect and find a way how we can help each other out. So I'll be in touch with you. But Gail, I appreciate you taking time today. It's been fun,
Thank you.
and I'm hoping that folks out there that want to partner with you can find a way to do so. So keep smiling, keep training those dogs, and hopefully those out there that need them. We'll pray that God connects you with those folks and you serve them the only way you know how, and that's with the best care and with those precious dogs. So I appreciate you, Gail.
Thank you so much. It was great seeing you again and having our little laughs.
All right. Well, you have an awesome day, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thanks. Take
All
care.
right. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.